than ever before, the time has come for federal and state governments in Nigeria to pay greater attention to constituency projects in the country. This was a subject of discussion in this meeting organized by the OrderPaper Advocacy Initiative and Budget with the support of MacArthur Foundation. This Thursday in Abuja with the theme Policy Dialogue on Situating Constituency Projects in the 2023 electioneering campaigns. Accountability in terms of ethics and governance is equated with answerability, blameworthiness, liability, and expectations. For proper governance, accountability is key, and to hold a system accountable, workable structures ought to be put in place.
Lawmaking, performance of oversight, and representation. So we have been, in the last couple of months, making an appraisal around lawmaking. So we have this scorecard that we have put out that have caused quite some interest and stir, both in the National Assembly ecosystem and, of course, in the general public or with the general public. Because that is limited to legislative, the performance of legislative duties, lawmaking specifically, not by design, but by circumstance, because it's difficult to actually make an objective appraisal of the function of representation, and this is up for clarity in case I make a wrong point. Representation entails, what you do for your constituents. Are you able to make them have their petitions resolved? How much of opportunities are you able to attract to them, bring to them? And we know this is very popular. How much of projects you are able to attract to your constituency. And so constituency projects appears, as it were, to be the core focus of the performance of representative or representation function.
In the 9th House of Representatives, we are driven by a motto, which is the joint task. And nation building is indeed a joint task. I am here today to participate in these conversations on the constituency projects. It is very interesting to hear the view from this side of the room, because I know when I go to my constituency, there's a lot of misinformation about constituency projects. And indeed, if we can, really, we need to expand the conversation even beyond just mere constituency projects or zonal intervention projects to any project at all that is being cited in Nigeria, domiciled in communities. We need some level of accountability beyond what the oversight functions provided by the Constitution and placed in the domain of the National Assembly, citizen participation and all of that.
But the significance of any law is not in the paper that has been signed. It's in the impact that it is able to make in the lives of the ordinary Nigerians. And I think that is where the biggest deficit is. So that when you look at our education sector, you look at our health sector, it's difficult to argue that there has been progress, even though we can see progress in the number of laws. But Nigerians are not concerned about those passages. Nigerians, when they wake up every morning, they're asking themselves, what is this budget? What does this budget mean for me as a person? So I want to please kindly encourage the National Assembly. We must move the metrics for performance evaluation from the number of laws or legislations that we have passed to how many women are we able to save from dying while giving birth? How many girls that otherwise will not go to school are we able to get back to school as a result of appropriating X amount of money? I think when we begin to have such conversation, right, we begin to build confidence and restore trust in the Nigerian people that have voted us into office. That's my first comment. And the second is related to that. The conversation today on constituency project, I think is very important. It's very important not only because constituency project takes at least some part of our money, but I think because the constituency project, again, draws on the responsibility, constitutional responsibility that the National Assembly has through its oversight on the executive. We have been schooled over time that yes, constituency projects are inserted or initiated by the parliament, but ultimately it is implemented by the executive. That's fine.
There are consequence project, which is also zonal intervention project. So if you can take us back briefly in the history, zonal intervention project started in year 2000. Remember during Obasanjo period, 1999, there wasn't something like zonal intervention project. It was some leaders in the National Assembly that met with him that we also were elected representatives, and our needs, we don't have a budget, so what will we do for us? So that year, there was some budgetary allocation under the Ministry of Work and Housing then that they do field project. So it was properly passed in year 2000, and that's what led to the 100 million we see today. And if you look about year 2000 to date, like around 22 years now, so like 2.2 trillion naira has been budgeted and allocated or disbursed. Though some years, 100% were not disbursed due to some certain reason. But last year, money were disbursed. This year, 2022, it was still a surprise to us that we've not seen any fund that were disbursed yet, or even the ZIP is not even yet out. And this is June, so we are still waiting. We are looking at what is actually happening. Though it seems that most of the people in National Assembly, they are being engrossed in primary election, trying to ensure that they get elected, and the executive and the legislative that are actually in charge of this, they are so very busy ensuring that that one is sorted. So we're surprised that if the 2022 is not in public domain, so when will work start and when will the sensitization at the grassroots start? So if you look about what actually the work of the legislators, some of their core work is the representatives of their people. And we are talking about representation. You know, we have the senators, which we have 109 in Nigeria and 360 Federal House of Rep, making 469. So if you look about this, in Nigeria to go, we have the governor, which we have the chairman, and the local government and the councillors. We have the state honorables, which are the state reps. We have federal reps. We have the senators. And it's so very disheartening that still people's need is not still really captured in their communities. Despite that they have like 7 people that are representing us, representing them from the federal, state, and the local government. So the representation of the people at the federal level, everyone with the elected representatives, they nominate projects for these people. Sometimes the legislators, they don't even know the situation of the people they are representing. And that's what the needs assessment need to be prioritized. We've monitored track projects because tracker is in 32 states, including the FCT here. To cover all geopolitical zones, and anyone that follows on our social media and those try to see the good and credible work we're doing. So we have the understanding of what is actually happening all over the country. There are peculiarities in different locations. But I'm talking about the needs assessment, which is very, very critical. Needs assessment is when there is a dilapidated primary access center, or there is a school that is dilapidated, roof been tattered, everything, nothing functional, or road, bad roads. But the legislators will not take their time or have their aides to perform the assessment needs, to know what people really need. They will just nominate empowerment projects We've seen a community that they don't need, street light is not even their problem. A community that does not have water, the road is bad. So what is now street light to them? They don't have any functional primary center. So those are the things that representation actually needs focus attention about.
This topic is quite interesting, very controversial, and creates a very robust debate in most cases. However, there's also a lot of misunderstanding about the topic, and in many cases, people comment without actually having the correct information. Yeah, so I hope that this paper would bring to limelight some of the contextual issues regarding legislators or MPs' accountability in relation to voters and constituents. And then we'll look at, just briefly, the institutionalization of constituency projects in several countries, and to see what are some of the challenges that in some cases impact negatively on attempts by legislators to serve their communities. I would not attempt to give answers or practical applications of some of these perspectives that I'm going to raise, but I hope that the legislators who have present would be effective panelists in trying to apply some of these views to the practice in Nigeria.
To the core duty of needs assessment by a legislator is very, very difficult. I'll give you a case in point here. Concerning me, in 2019, I planned over 150 million worth of items for empowerment, cutting across provision of transformers, getting a grinding machine for local women, getting tricycles and motorcycles and all that. So how did I go about it? I decided, because in 2016 and all about, I've used in my needs assessment of people who need what. I use politicians from my different coordinators in different 6 local government areas covering 102 wards. And we have done that over time. So in 2019, I changed and decided to go through the religious bodies in my area, the priests in every deanery in my district. I asked them to look for the poorest of poor, or the poor in the area, people who are vulnerable, people who need this thing. And I place it, I have to go out and tell him about the story of Naaman, the Naaman's curse. That if you just don't get this thing to get those people, and it gets into the wrong hands, the poverty and all those things that will come back to the people. You see, so I have to be just that. So I said, go out and help me. It took us time to get the priests to go and pick the people that need this or this. And in process, I also got my fingers burnt. Because when I decided, because of the delay in making sure you get this is right, and then having contending issues with fellow politicians who think that you are taking too much political space, what do? They have to go and say that Otaze has packed things and they want to sell them. They want to pocket what I brought in a complete knockdown parts and then assemble them. And got 4 policemen from Nsukka area command to keep watch over them. And as a politician, people come to my house during the campaign. They saw all this, and I want to sell them.
Particularly for nationally elected legislators, House of Rep and Senators. The federal government is constituted executive, which is all various departments and so on. Through the way we are structured, cannot and will not, and even be able to do that, address the issues that affect the people at the lowest level of society. When I said lowest level, just like he said, I mean the communities. And the way our physical system is structured, the federal government takes large chunk of the national resources. Yes, we have state, we have local government. Many local governments in Nigeria, as we speak, can barely even pay salary, talk less of now addressing some of these issues. Because if our physical system has been in such a way that resources are allocated to be able to address those issues, maybe you can say national legislators will look at things. But I would say, for example, we talk about the Ministry of Water Resources at the federal level. What will the executive propose? They'll be thinking of big dams, the river basins and so on. That's where their budget will go. But where I represent, a village somewhere there, still several villages don't have access to potable water.
From my understanding of what this is, right, I think legislators, their duty with respect to constituency projects is pointing development in the right direction. This is where this should go. This is where what fits here. This is so. I think the constant conversation that makes it look like they have this bulk of money that they get to spend and do what they want to do with is quite false. It's simply this, pointing development where it should go. So for us, for people at the grassroots level, it's kind of difficult to understand this. You know, she has spoken about this in a very brilliant presentation of what the electorate end up seeing and the burden on legislators for this. And I think that at the end of the day, the solution to this, and it's not to say that legislators are not doing this already, our electoral system is heavily flawed. So no matter what you put into this system, what she has pointed out is what keeps coming back. It's a highly monetized system. People want personal gains out of this system. So you want to talk about we're bringing these books to you, these schools to you that you so desperately need. And the conversation keeps coming back to what is in it for me. And that what is in it for me is not necessarily the education you're talking about. Of course, it's mostly monetary concerns. So you would see somebody who is performing really well and the general conversation around him is he's stingy. Where do you go from there? So we need to, as a people, bring the conversation back to, look, collective gain. This is what these communities stand to benefit from this. This is what all of us as a group start to benefit from this, and this is the future of it. We need to bring back the conversation to politics being a conduit to governance, right? As it is now, we still haven't gotten that right. People still do not see politics as the link, as what takes them to delivery of government services. They still haven't seen politics yet as what gives them what is necessary of their society. So as long as we're not able to deliver that conversation, as long as we're not able to bring the conversation around elections to that, we'll continue to miss the point.
Peculiar Mercy, AK, Dajik TV News.